So good evening everyone. We are going to start with a continuation of the second chapter, that is designing of components. So in last lecture we have seen something about the designing part, which was with the starting from requirements till the system architecture and then the system integration. So each and every part we have seen how the system has to be designed. Even we have talked something about the example of GPS system, how to design, what are the various components it is required, and rest all things we have seen in the last lecture. Now today we are going to continue the same thing regarding the designing of components. So let us see in detail about this. So in this we are going to see the embedded systems, where everywhere we are talking about the embedded systems. But what exactly are the components required for this embedded system? Let us see. So embedded systems are amazing if we are into programming and making circuits, boards and robots. As we see nowadays, manpower is reducing day by day, which is taking place by the different machines like robots, and those robots are programmable robots which does the work of the human beings nowadays. So the embedded system components are basically divided into two parts. As first one, the hardware components, and second one, the software components. So as we have been seeing, the designing part or the embedded system itself is said that embedded systems are nothing but the combination of hardware as well as softwares. So it is obvious to know to how the designing part is taking place with the hardware components and what are the components required as in software. So system, that is embedded system hardware components. We are going to see in detail about this embedded system hardware components. As we know, embedded system is a combination of hardware and software, as I told you earlier. There are different hardware components which require the power supply, which require the processors, which require the memory, which require the timers and the counters that make together the embedded hardware. We have seen in the last lecture that the hardware's components are different and the software components are different. We have seen the block diagram for the hardware component, in which it was consisting of the display methods, which was consisting of the memories, which was consisting of the CPUs, and which was consisting of the main part, that the power supply. So let us see in detail about all these things which is together going to make an embedded system. The first part we are going to see is the power supply. The power supply is an essential part of any embedded circuits. Obviously, even though you are going to consider the handheld device, it is consisting of the power supply. Nowadays, each and everything required either the batteries or it is going to work on the power supply. So an embedded system, whatever you are going to design for that particular application, most of the embedded systems work on 5-volt power supply, or if it is low power, then it might be working on 3.3 or 1.8 volt. But maximum volt required for any embedded system is designed for 5 volts. Later, the supply may be provided with the help of battery, or we can use any wall adapter. As I told you just now, the power supply, how it has been given, depended upon the application. That power supply can be continuously with the help of the adapter, or instead of the use of that adapter, we can use with the help of the batteries as well. The battery is inserted in each and every cell, so that once the battery is charged, it can be worked throughout the application. And if it is dependent, and if the battery is going to get low, again we are going to insert, or again we are going to charge that battery with the help of the power supply. So that is dependent upon the application what the user is required. So the power supply circuitry can be designed with the help of some little knowledge of electronics. Obviously, we know what all things are required for the power supply, which is need for the electronics gadgets. So far, to build a power supply, we need the bridge rectifier circuit, we need a capacitor for the filter, a voltage regulator power supply that keeps the output constant. So let us see a small circuit how the power supply is designed. So with the help of this, you can see this diagram. Okay, this is the rectifier diagram, and it is very common that you can see the output voltage is continuously, as we need 5 volt DC supply, so continuously it is given. There is one 8051 which is going to work as a voltage regulator, which provides the constant output supply. With respect to that, we are going to use a 1000 microfarad capacitor to get out the filter signals, and then we are going to use a rectifier, bridge rectifier, which is designed with the help of the bridge, the transformer, and continuously the power supply will be given at the 230 volt AC supply, right? So with the help of this diagram, you can get the 5 volt DC supply. Now to get this diagram, first you need to make the circuit diagram. You need to take that particular devices, that components to be placed into that particular PCB board. You need to solder it, and then you need to check whether the output at each and every component, that is transformer, rectifier, voltage regulator, output filter, whether you are going to get the output voltage accordingly or not. So it is very common that produces 5 volt at the output, and you can change. Now the output of this can be changed with the help of this voltage regulator, and we can use 8070, 7808 or 7812, or we can use also 7805 depending upon the output required. Now basically we should know, to get the constant output, there are some good qualities, there should be some good characteristics for the power supply. The first, if we are going to see, that is a stable and smooth output. As we know, each and every controller or each and every system or each and every application, whatever you are using, it should run on a very smooth condition. It should not fluctuate all the time. The output, whatever it is required, should be always constant. So that power supply should continuously be supplied to each and every component you have been soldered, and the output you are going to get in a constant way. So it should be stable, and second one, the smooth output should be given. The next we are going to see is the proper output current to drive the load. Now each and every supply or each and every component whatever you are using, for example, if you are going to use a transformer over here, 230 volt AC, what output you are going to get at the transformer? The same output should be given to the bridge rectifier over here. Unless and until the constant output you are going to get from the transformer, the bridge rectifier is not going to work. So the output from each and every component you are going to use should have the proper output to get the driven load. Next is the perfect power efficiency. Now efficiency is what? Each and every component should have its own efficiency. With a good efficiency, the output should be given. Now second, the stable in different temperature range. Now as we know, as the environment is going to change outside, whether there are 3 conditions in which we are going through all the day. Sometimes it will be rainy, sometimes it will be summer season, sometimes it will be the winter season. So accordingly the temperature is also going to vary. So in each and every condition, in each and every weather condition, the output should be constant. So depending upon that, we need to decide what actually the component has to be used, so that in each and every condition, each and every weather condition, the output is in a good range. Second thing, we need to see that proper noise filtering is possible. So whatever the components you are using, according with the help of the capacitors of that particular range, see that the noise from each and every component you are going to use should be filtered out properly. Proper decoupling should be done. Now there are two regulations. With the help of the transformer, we can arrange that load regulation either in a line regulation or in a load regulation. So line regulation, which is the fluctuation in output while the input is going to change. Now as we know, each and every time the input is not constant, but you want output as a constant, but the input is not going to get constant. So that time you need to follow the line regulation. And when the output voltage, that is the fluctuation in output voltage, when the load of the current is going to change, that time you need to look upon the load regulation. What kind of load you are going to get at the output. So depending upon that load also, the fluctuation at the output is carried out. Next you should see the efficiency of the power supply. Then you need to look for the input output ripple voltage, you need to look for the transient response, and obviously you need to look the available dissipations. So these are some characteristics of a good power supply where you are going to get the constant output. Next we are going to see the processor. The processor is the main brain inside any embedded system. Unless and until a processor, as we have seen in the very first lectures, that embedded system is going to work on microprocessors or either the microcontrollers. So these processors or this controller is the heart of the embedded system, is the main component of the embedded system. And this is the major factor that is going to affect on the performance of the system. Obviously, if I need the maximum 64, as I given in the example of the mobile phones also, as if you are going to have the 64 GB memory in it, and you are extending the memory of 128 GB suppose, obviously the performance is going to get degraded, is it not? So see what kind of memory you are using. That memory should be sufficient for that particular application to drive, which is very important to get the good performance of an embedded system. As we have seen, performance is the major role provided by the embedded system. So as we are talking about the processor, there are many manufacturers who are going to manufacture the different kinds of processors. So there are different processors available in the market. So depending upon the embedded system, depending upon the application, the use you can do for either microprocessor or either microcontroller. Some processor comes in different architectures like 8-bit, 16-bit and 32-bit. The 8-bit processor, if you are going to use, generally it is used in a very small applications where we need some basic computation like input and output with no any heavy processing. Just whatever the data you are going to give, the output should be produced. In such simple application, the processors can be used. But for the higher end applications where the performance is in 32-bit or in a very high applications, the matter of the performance. So as the matter is of the performance, you can switch from processor to controller. So what are the criteria for selecting the processors? First one, the speed. What speed, at what rate the output is given, the speed is required. Now for that, what is the manufacturer price? What is the unit price behind that speed we need to know. What is the packaging of that processor is required, and most importantly we need to know the performance. After using that processor, at what kind of performance it is giving, that is much required. The peripheral setups, the timers on the chip, as we are going to work on the real-time embedded system, at the accurate time the output has to be driven out. For that we need to know what is the timer the chip is going to handle, at what operating voltage the system is going to work, and how many number of input output pins we are going to use. So depending upon this some criteria selection, the processor has to be selected. For selecting the procedure or for selecting the processor, let us see what is the criteria. First, see the power consumption, which is the most important thing for the processor to need. How much power it is consuming. If suppose for a simple application also it is consuming more power, then that processor is not used. So see that amount of RAM and ROM. As I told you, the memory, the application is required for which kind of application, which kind of memory you're using. For that kind, see the amount of RAM and ROM used, specialized processing units required. Now the architecture, whether it is 8-bit, 32-bit or 16-bit, according to the application you need to know. The availability of the supplier for the given core. Now as I told you, there are number of suppliers, there are number of manufacturers who is going to process or who is going to designing that particular processor. So according to your application, if suppose this kind of processor 8085, suppose if you are going to take, and it is going to work according to your need, let us see whether it is available in the market, whether the supplier is able to give you all according to your need, and then go for it. See that it is easy to upgrade to higher or the lower power consumption mode, and most likely availability of the software tools like assembler, debugger, compiler, emulator and technical support. While compiling, while dubbing the software into that processor or the controller, look after all these things, whether that processor is able to assemble it, whether the processor is supporting for the debugger, whether the processor is compiling the code, and whether it is going to get the output in the emulator, and for the technical support as well. So if we are going to use a microcontroller, that 8 mega microcontroller, as I told you, 80951 or 8952 or 8 mega, any 8 megas, the memory is available on chip. Whatever the memory you are going to take, it is available on chip. It is no needed to add any extra memory for that. So if we generally talk about the memory in the embedded system, there are two types of memories. First one is read-only memory, and second one is the random access memory, that is ROM. Now this RAM memory or ROM memory is what you just need to load the contents. Once it is done forever. But if you are going to talk about the EEPROM memories, double EEPROM memories, where electrically erasable programmable read-only memory, due to some electrical things you can erase once the data is being stored into that memory. That is nothing but called as double EEPROM memory. So if you see the RAM memory is nothing but the volatile memory. It is used for the temporary storage of the data, and the selection is dependent upon the user need and the application. For if you consider ROM memory or the code memory, it is used for the storage of the program. Once the system is powered, the system fetches the code from the ROM memory. And the next is the EEPROM memory, where it is a unique memory and the contents that is to be erased and reprogrammable again. So in this kind of memory, as I told you, technically or electrically, the data whatever you have been stored into that memory can be erased and can be reprogrammed again according to the user's demand. This is used to store the data by the program itself. And suppose we have a temperature data logger and it needs to store the data every hour. Now obviously, where we are going to use the temperature, where we need to sense the temperature every time. For example, if you see, whenever you are using the mobiles, on each and every time you are seeing the temperature on your mobile screen, is it not? So every time the temperature is changing, if you move from day to morning, the temperature is going to increase or either it is going to get decreased. So accordingly, the each and every moment, each and every hour, the system has to take the data for that temperature, and you need to store it accordingly. It means that we need the data to run time and the system is started, and the system will read the temperature and store it in the EEPROM memory, and it will be permanent and you can retrieve the data later. So the embedded system developer decide which memory to use for which kind of applications. The fourth, we are going to see how we are going to use the timers and counters. So for these timers and counters, if we are working on the embedded systems, and you must have heard about what actually is the timers, what actually are the counters, why to use the timers, why to use the counters, or what is the difference between the timers and counters. In some application we need to generate some delay, right? Now for example, suppose you have been designed a machine where you require the delay after each and every minute. That is nothing but, suppose if you're going to take an example, if you have designed a machine, a sanitizer machine, okay, for that sanitizer machine, now that sanitizer machine is an independent, is it not? So once you keep one hand so that the drop of the sanitizer